Thank you for coming to this session on choosing your cloud. First of all, remind you, you've seen this a couple of times today already, but please silence your phones. I know you're all busy, so if you need to step out to take a call, feel free. But if you keep it on silent so nobody else gets disturbed, that's fine. Thank you. And remember, explore everything PASS has to offer, both virtual groups, your local user groups, and SQL Saturdays. There might be something worth learning there. And as speakers, we, of course, think that we have gotten everything right the first time. Probably we are missing something. And we really appreciate any honest feedback, be that negative or positive, that we can use to improve our session for the next audience. So please submit the session evaluation. My name is Johan Ludvig. I'm from Norway. I'm a lead solution architect for Capgemini. I also co-organize the SQL Saturday in Oslo, volunteer for different things, and you might have seen my name on the keynote today, because I'm also running for the board. Then it's...
Yes, my name is Rune Ovelien Rakaie. I'm also from Norway. I work for a Nordic IT service provider called Every, where I work as a cloud architect. I've been working with SQL Server and database technology the last 20 plus years. I'm also the main organizer for SQL Saturday in Oslo. And in my spare time, I go bicycle riding in the forest in my hometown of Arendal.
So this is the second step of the learning pathway for cloud migration. How many here attended the first session? Quite a few, okay. We are not going to tell you how to migrate best to Azure. I'm sorry. We're trying to help you in the session to see which tools the cloud providers have to help you, and also how to make use of your plan that you've learned about in the first session in your migration onwards. And then in the third step of your cloud migration, each cloud vendor will tell you how to best migrate to their cloud. And of course, this being an important conference, you need to bring value back to your supervisor. We offer you a test at the end. Well, it's not really a test, it's a quiz. And there will be prizes. So be prepared for some cheesy music. Some of you who were here early heard that music earlier. But, you know.
But it is important to pay attention, so if you want to win, that is.
Yeah, if you want to win. Also, feel free to interrupt us with questions during the session. That's totally fine, and we'll also have some time in the end, hopefully. So, how many people here are DBAs? Yeah, at least 50%. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there any architects here? A couple. Yay. Some developers. A few managers. A few as well. We have a lot of hats, don't we? Yeah. And are there some analysts there as well? Yeah. Some single person in the back. Okay. Cool. Hopefully we will be able to help you in different ways. We have slight focus on the OLTP side, but we will be talking, as you see here, also on doing BI in the cloud. So these are the vendors we are focusing on. There are several other vendors. I could say Oracle, but I'd start laughing, so I'll skip it. But we're focusing on the big three. AWS, Google, and Microsoft Azure. All of you work for companies that the providers want as their customers. They want your transactions. So get the vendors to come to you, if you can. I mean, I work for a company with 200, soon 300,000 employees. They will come to us. You might work for a company that has 10 people or 50 people, it might be a bit more difficult to get the vendors to approach you directly. But you can use their partner networks. Either way, get the different cloud providers or their representatives come see you and present to you. This. You might be able to find, or you might already have an agreement with some partners in your local area. Otherwise, you can go to the cloud vendors partner portal and look up either a partner that is within a certain business area or competency area, or just in your local, the one most closest to you. So Google Cloud has a small partner network, but it is growing. They're recruiting actively. AWS, the oldest and biggest of them all, has a rich partner network. They also offer plenty of do-it-yourself tools. And Microsoft Azure, which is also big, though for some reason AWS still has a rumor for being the biggest. That rumor is changing. But Azure has also a rich partner network, and as well as AWS, they have plenty of different tools to help you. Today, well, all the cloud vendors will say they're enterprise ready, and we'll be mentioning enterprise ready as well. Of course, what does enterprise ready really mean? And of course, we weren't really sure what that was. How many here, when you're not sure, go to Stack Overflow? Yeah? I did, and I found an answer. It's a very good definition, but let's just say that what we really want to look at is how do the vendors cope with security? What kind of tools do they have to offer and bring to the table in terms of identity access management, encryption, monitoring, logging, as well as trying to fit the best tools for your business applications, integrations and API management, and so on. And of course, scalability, global reach if you need that, and service level agreements and support. That's basically what it means. Now, on to choosing a vendor for the OLTP.
Thank you. So let's just dive right into it. Let's talk about AWS. What are their strengths? Well, they are enterprise ready. They are quite mature. They have been around for quite a few years, and I guess they're also what we said, they were the first ones out there offering cloud computing services. They have a proven track record. Well, you might have heard about this online shopping sites called Amazon. AWS handles their computing. And also, if you like to watch movies, Netflix is running on AWS.
As well as Prime Video, of course.
And Prime Video, of course, as well, yeah. They have a wide range of services, and also they have global presence. They have quite a bit of tools, as we have talked about previously, which can help you, from the beginning when you are doing your discovery of what you have in your on-premises environment, how you're going to do assessment of how to figure out how to move that from your on-prem environment to the cloud, and also tools that you will use during your migration process. We're going to focus on the data platform part and look at specifically two tools, the schema conversion tool and the database migration services. So, AWS schema conversion tool. What is it? Well, the name is kind of explanatory, self-explanatory actually. It helps you convert schemas to supported targets. So supported targets are then obviously database engines that is available in AWS. It has an migration assessment part, which produces reports both in PDF format and CSV format. It's integrated with DMS, or Database Migration Service. So within SAT, Schema Conversion Tool, you can create migration tasks. You can stop, start, resume. You can delete them. And of course, also you can monitor the progress of migration. Some database engines have functionality that, especially if you're going to do a heterogeneous database migration. So let's say if you're going to migrate from, let's say, Oracle, and you're going to migrate to Postgres in AWS. Let's say you are using functionality, the email integrated functionality in Oracle. That doesn't exist in Postgres. So what Schema Conversion Tool does, it identifies that you're using this specific feature. Then it creates code using AWS Lambda. If you've heard about that, that is the AWS's version of function as a service. And together with a set of Python libraries, it will emulate that functionality in AWS using Postgres as your database engine. It also has the functionality, if you are in control of the source code of your application yourself, you can point SAT towards your code, and it will perform an analysis and discover what kind of SQL statements you have in your code and recommend changes if necessary for your target database engine. So let's have a quick run through of the user interface. So pay attention, this is kind of, it goes a little bit faster now than it does in real life. You start the tool, you start a project wizard, you enter the name of your project, you select what kind of database engine you're going to migrate from, what kind of assessment you would like to perform, and connect to your source, select the schema, and hey, here we go. We have performed an assessment. This is what you end up with. And what we see here, you probably can't read it, but that's intentional. But what you see here is the first part of the executive summary. So the migration report consists of three parts. The executive summary, where it lists up, like it quantifies and summarizes, okay, how much of your database code is possible to migrate without any changes at all to your target database engine, and what parts of your code do you need to do changes for in order to run in your target environment. Then it also has conversion statistics, color-coded, in the same way with the type of objects that is migrated automatically, what needs to be looked at in order to make it work in your target database environment. And also at the end of the report, it has a detailed list of all the identified issues it has found. So what kind of issue? What should you do in order to make it run in your target environment? And which objects are affected by this specific issue? Let's look at the database migration service. So what is it? It's a service that AWS provides that makes it a lot easier for you to migrate from on-prem to AWS. But also between database instances on premises. So there's a catch there. So let's say you want to migrate from Oracle to Postgres, and you want to use Azure Database Migration Service. What you have to sorry, AWS, sorry, AWS Database Migration Service. So what you have to do is to perform the schema conversion. You will migrate the database to AWS and use AWS as a staging area. Then you can migrate from AWS back to on-prem to your preferred database engine. So that's what I mean. So that is allowed in the licensing for this specific service. You can do one-time migrations, or you can replicate ongoing. And also what this tool helps with, if you're going to just do a one-off, one database, one small database, I probably wouldn't use this kind of service. If I have hundreds of databases and I would like to migrate those at the same time, yeah, then this is the right kind of tool for that purpose. It is a cloud service, and that also means it has all the benefits of running in a cloud. It has the elasticity component, and well, you can provision it, and you can tear it down when you no longer use it. It is also free if you are migrating to AWS managed database. Examples of that is the Aurora database engines for MySQL and Postgres. For the NoSQL versions, there is the AWS DynamoDB, which and AWS DocumentDB. And also, if you are migrating a data warehouse workload, you can also use it for migrating to AWS Redshift. So the architecture of this service is quite simple. You have your source database engine on the so what is that? That's on your left side, and you define a source endpoint. You have the replication engine running in a EC2 instance, and you define your target endpoint, and then it moves the data into your target database engine.
EC2 means that it's a virtual machine, right?
EC2, yeah, that's the AWS's name for a VM. So let's talk a little bit about Azure.
Yeah.
What strengths do Azure has? Well, they also claim to be enterprise ready, and I believe them. They also have actually sector-specific advantages. And what do we mean by that? Well, believe it or not, there are other online shopping sites out there which is competing with Amazon, and they don't want to give Amazon more money, so they will choose
generally retail sector.
Retail sector
yeah.
in general, yeah. They also have a very wide range of services, and to be frank, they do SQL Server a lot better and also cheaper.
And as you notice by the tools that AWS gives out, they want you to move to their versions of database engines. So it's a lot easier to move to Postgres or MySQL than to move SQL Server on-prem to SQL Server in AWS.
Azure.
No, in AWS.
Oh, okay.
Whereas in Microsoft has a lot of tools to help you move SQL Server on-prem to Azure.
Running SQL Server.
Yeah.
So what kind of tools do we have available in Azure? They have also very rich tool sets that can help you, from the even before you do anything, before you're doing at the point in time in a migration where you're going to figure out what do I have and how to migrate. So the top one there, Cloud Adoption Framework. I think it's kind of been a relaunch, or is going to be relaunched this week during Ignite. You can actually download it. It's only 1,600 pages, PDF file. So it's quite extensive, and all kinds of guides, and for all kinds of workloads. Yeah, so if you have trouble sleeping at night, you probably could browse through that PDF documents. But yeah, it's good content, but if you're tired.
It's very detailed, it's very rich. It's not something that you'll sit down and read just before going to bed, unless you want to fall asleep quickly. But it helps you, not just for the basic choosing your cloud, but also for making your plan. And that is why you will also see Google has the same thing. Hopefully AWS will get something like this as well, because it just helps you do all the things that you need in order to be successful.
I'd also like to single out the, let's see if we can get this to work. No, I didn't get that to work.
On the other side.
It was on the other side?
No,
okay.
you'll have to move there. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, the database migration guide. That is a website, databasemigration.microsoft.com, which has a lot of guides, from your target database engine, not only SQL Server, how to migrate that to SQL Server, either as a managed service, so that would be SQL Server, Azure SQL Database, Azure SQL Database Managed Instance, or SQL Server running on a VM in Azure. But we're going to focus, we'll go more in detail today on two specific tools, Data Migration Assistant and also Database Migration Service. The one above Data Migration Assistant, SQL Server Migration Assistant, that is for heterogeneous migration. So if you're going to migrate from Oracle, Sybase, Access to SQL Server, that's the tool you want to use. If you're going to migrate from SQL Server to a SQL Server database engine in Azure, you want to use Data Migration Assistant. So let's have a look at Data Migration Assistant. So what is it? First of all, it helps you perform this pre-assessment or this assessment of your specific database or your specific databases. And it will identify migration blockers, any unsupported functionality, breaking changes or behavioral changes. It will notify you if there are any new functionality in your target database environment that could help you in order to get a better performance after you have migrated. It can also help you migrate SSIS packages. I believe it still only has I believe it has the limitation that you can only migrate file-based SSIS packages. And you can also upload assessment to the Azure Migrate Hub. I mentioned Azure Migrate previously, and I
showed it.
I showed that I didn't mention it. That is migration kind of dashboard.
Yep.
Where you, when you have performed assessment on your VM workload, the results will be put there, also the status of the migration process itself, and also you can do it for databases using this tool. It isn't only limited to migration to Azure. You can also use it to migrate from an older version of SQL Server to a newer version, or how Microsoft frames it, modern SQL Server. Yes. But this isn't the coolest part of this tool. The coolest part of this tool is the the command line interface they provide. And let's have a look at the different things you can do there. First of all, you can use the command line interface to perform a consolidated assessment report. So what is that? Well, it's a scaled assessment of multiple instances. So how does this work? Well, first of all, you define an inventory. An inventory you can define either in a CSV file. So you have two columns. You have the name of the instance, and you have the name of the database. And you can have many of them. Or you can put them in a SQL Server table. Then you run a PowerShell module. It's called DMA Data Collector. Where you define, where is my inventory defined, either in a SQL Server table or a CSV file. Here in this example, it is in a SQL Server table. You define, what is my target environment? In this example, I have Azure SQL Database. You have 7 different targets. You have Azure SQL Database. You have Azure SQL Database Managed Instance. You have SQL Server 2017 for Linux, for Windows. You have SQL Server 2016, 2014, and 2012.
And most likely 2019 next week.
And when I started the tool earlier today, I was notified there is a new version. So probably 2019 is also included now in the newest version. And running this tool, it generates a JSON file. So you run this as many times as the target environment you are wondering if you're going to migrate to or not. And then when you have all these JSON files, you run a second PowerShell module called the DMA processor. And you point to the directory where you have all your JSON files. And you also define, okay, we have two databases. We have a staging database, and we have a data warehouse database. And what it does is storing this data into your staging table in your staging database, and then you run some extra scripts to load the staging data to a data warehouse. So this is a proper data warehouse, a star schema-based data warehouse. And then you open the Power BI report template, and then you can go into depth of the data generated from this assessment. And this is an example how it would look. I've been told that from a visualization point of view,
it's horrible. It sucks. I'm sorry, but yes.
But since it is a Power BI template, that means you can do pretty much anything you want with this report and make it even more useful. It also has a remediation plan, so that means it details, all the findings it has done during the assessment. Second type of functionality that the command line interface has is to identify your Azure SQL database stock keeping unit. You might have wondered, I have this workload on my on-premises environment, and you might have seen there are many sizes available for SQL database in Azure. And how am I able to know that? Well, I could do what we not usually, but probably some of us will do. We just try it out, see if it works. And if it doesn't work, okay, we change the size. If you wanted to have it right the first time, you can use this functionality. So what it does, it collects performance counters in your current environment. And it's a PowerShell script that's being run. This PowerShell script is part of the installation of Data Migration Assistant. The previously mentioned modules you have to download from Microsoft.com. Where you define, okay, what is the name of my instance? Where am I going to put the results of this data collection? And how long should this data collection run? And the recommended time is at a minimum 40 minutes, preferably a lot longer, at least in the period of time you are doing, you have your peak workload, so you will get correct numbers to get the right size of your
you don't want to run this at midnight, for instance, yeah.
Probably
not. Yeah.
Yeah, and it outputs file for further processing. And this is where you use the command line interface. This looks a lot like a wall of text. So you define, the input file, so the result of the previous step. What kind of output do I want? You can have the output in tabular separated file, in an HTML document. You can define, okay, you can also get the prices here. So what kind of currency you would like your prices in? This example here, we have euros. What kind of offer? So all subscriptions have different type of offers. This is the offer code for pay-as-you-go. The documentation for this specific functionality has links to all the different offers you can choose. And also which region are you going to run? There are different prices for services depending on which region you're running your SQL database in. And are you going to perform this for one single database or for a lot of databases? And this is where you specify this. And your subscription ID, and some authentication information. And then it returns the output both for Azure SQL Database, but also for Azure SQL Database Managed Instance. And this is an example of the table-separated output file. I have color-coded here for your convenience. So the column on the far right is tier recommended, so it's either true or false. But what's interesting here is the second part on the lower part of the screen here. It also tells you why it didn't choose the other ones. And that's also interesting to know. And this is an example of an HTML version of the same type of report. And this is an interactive document, so that means you can use the sliders here to slide both the sizes up and down, and the price will change accordingly. And you can also generate an ARM template, Azure Resource Manager template, to automate the provisioning as well from within this document.
Yeah, when you're running this tool, if you're running it like at peak load, right, against the system, does it interfere with performance at all?
So the question is, if you run this tool during peak, if it interferes with the workload?
It collects performance counters. So if you've had experience where collecting performance counters have made an impact of your ongoing load, then it's difficult to answer. This is the only way that you can get this information.
Yeah. Is it any worse than, say, PSS diag or?
No.
I don't think so, because that also collects performance counters, but maybe not running that long as recommended here. So what I would do, I would try it out. And even though you set the time for 4 hours and you noticed, hey, this kind of doesn't work with my workload at the moment, then you will just skip or abort the running of the script. That's what I would do.
Yep. That was a good question, so you get a reward. Yay! This luggage tag for you.
So, the database migration service. It is pretty much the same as the AWS service. It makes it easier to migrate, especially if you have loads of databases or many databases you would like to migrate at the same time, or if it's a very large database and you want to perform an online migration. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. So either one-time migration or an ongoing replication. It is a cloud service with all the benefits of being in the cloud. It has two modes. Either offline migration, which is basically it does a backup in your source database environment and restores it in your target database environment. Online is database replication. It has two pricing tiers. So either the standard, which only supports offline migration, which is free. It also has the premium, which can do both, and it's free for the 6 first months.
You might get 3 months of extension if you try and ask nicely.
Yes, you can actually get an extra 3 months. So let's have a look at this in action.
Also, the slides will be made available later on the schedule. Yeah?
So AWS doesn't have a replication migration?
They do have a replication migration as well, yeah.
So let's have a look at the schema conversion tool first. So we saw the really fast intro of the tool previously, and this is how it looks when you have. This is how it looks like when you have clicked finish. So what we see here on the left side, we have my source database engine. Hold on. there were a few more, a little bit more information I wanted to share with you. And that is, what's my environment look like? So this is the demo environment. I have my on-premises network where I'm running SQL Server 2008 for my migration to AWS. I've set up a site-to-site VPN to AWS, where I have installed database migration service, the database engine, and also have a jump client where I'm running a schema conversion tool. More or less the same type of environment for Azure. Yeah, it is the exact same environment for Azure. Full disclosure, I'm not really connected to my on-premises network, so today we will pretend that on-premises is actually Google Cloud Platform. So that's where it's running. So, yes, this is the result. My source database on the left side and my target database engine on the right side. So let's use a different view here, the assessment report view. This might be a little bit small, so let's zoom in. So you can see here, these are all the things it has found that makes it difficult to convert or migrate to.
So in AWS, the target is MySQL?
Yes.
But in
Correct, from SQL Server to MySQL. Thank you. That's a very good question, but it makes for a good demo.
Again, it's because AWS wants you to migrate to one of theirs. Yeah.
So this only does the databases, right? How about the other things like logins, like link servers? If we have any packages or something, we have to do it ourselves? Or?
Yeah, you have to. The question was, what do you have more than just data? Well, tables and procedures. How should that be migrated? Like users and logins and SSIS packages. Was that what you meant? Yeah. Yeah. Then this tool won't help you with this.
Yeah.
Because it's like a schema version of it for the AWS side, is it like have the same restriction as the Azure, where if you have a three-part naming, for instance, cross-database, cross-schema, it doesn't handle it well, because they're suggesting then in that case you port the whole thing to a VM and then start to break it apart into managed instance.
Do you know that answer? I'm not sure. The question was if the naming convention, if that is not supported.
Like basically if you have cross-database, linked servers.
Yeah. So the question is, if you have within your database calling objects in another database, so cross-database queries or linked server type of queries, is this converted? And the answer is no.
Anyways, both of those questions we had were pretty good.
So as you notice, there is in the user interface here an exclamation circle with an exclamation mark, and it has identified there are some stored procedures that is not possible to migrate. It happened to be that these stored procedures are actually system stored procedures for database diagrams in SQL Server, and we don't want to migrate that, so let's just remove those. And magically, all my issues disappear. Let's see, is it one more table? Yeah, that one. We don't want that either. And let's zoom out. Now we're ready for, no issues exist any longer, so we are ready to migrate. Cool, let's do that. And we'll do that from here. So right-click the schema, convert the schema. The object, we get a warning. The object might already exist in a target database engine. Yeah, that's true, but just so you know, I'm not cheating here. This is the tool I'm using to log into MySQL. So let's just refresh this one. So to see if there's nothing up my sleeves. No, nothing. Cool. Let's continue with the schema conversion. And now we have a schema here, salesdb_dbo. Now, this is just kind of a draft. So if I had discovered here any issues, it would notify me. I'm going to apply the changes. And now it is saved soon in my MySQL database engine. So let's see if that actually has happened. Refresh. Cool. Wait, no, not there. There it is. So that's the conversion part of things. Now let's.
Data, right? It did not move the data, it just was.
This only the schema, so the table definitions and the stored procedure definitions. So let's have a look at database migration service. This is the dashboard. I have well, actually nothing is happening here, but this is my replication instance. It has discovered that I'm going to migrate to a AWS managed database. So that's why it says here it's free. It's free for the 6 first months. I have defined my endpoints. I have my source and my target. So let's create a migration task. So what I've done here, I have pre-filled in the fields. So I have given the task a name. I've selected my replication instance, my source endpoint, my target endpoint. What kind of migration am I going to perform? I'm going to perform, I want to do a full load and then also migrate all ongoing data, or ongoing changes in my data in my source database engine, or from my source database engine. And we'll just
You're running the free tier version of the VM, right? So it's a bit slow. Yeah.
It's just kind of hung. There. Okay. I shouldn't hit the keys so many times in a row. Anyways, let's just start the task, migration task. ssrs is creating, and also, as I mentioned previously, the schema conversion tool can monitor. You can monitor the
Migration.
migration. Yeah. Come on. Perfect.
You forgot to sacrifice to the demo gods. Okay. Maybe we should just skip this because I think we're running a bit out of time.
Let's see if we can do the same here. I promise you, it is running. Let's see if we can prove it for you later. So it seems like I have the same issue here. So this is my internet connection, which is kind of giving me grief at the moment.
Yeah. So question?
So using these migration tools, it looks like it plays really nice for the most part when it's coming from your on-prem environment to one of these. I work for a larger company that has lots of different areas that are going in different directions with the cloud. What happens if one of those areas once says, well, we're on AWS right now, but we really want to be on Azure? Do these play nice going from cloud to cloud?
Yeah.
The question was if these tools actually play nicely if you want to switch from one to the other.
And the answer is yes. As long as you can connect to your source environment from your target environment, yes, then you can use this tool. So that's usually done by setting up a site-to-site VPN.
Yeah, actually, I was in iGallus's pre-con about migrating to the cloud earlier, and he talked about the fact that I think at Equinix is actually the data center.
Equinox.
Equinox, and you can higher. So, because in a lot of the data centers, both Azure and AWS are actually existing in the same building.
Yeah.
And there are people who have the option to just take the wires and put them on the other provider should something go wrong.
Yeah, most providers actually don't own their own data centers, they just rent them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So the comment here was that, you can use site-to-site VPN and use internet as your transport from your source to your target. But also there's a company called Equinox, and there are several types of companies who provide service that you can set up a direct connection from one cloud to the other, since both cloud vendors have their what do you call it, junctions or connections at the same location. So that's possible to do. And also, if there is a lot of data you're going to move, that might be a better choice. More expensive, but still better because you will save time.
It's also very timely to set up, apparently. If you're going to do this, you want to plan it out 40 days in advance because you also have to deal with the telco,
Yeah.
AT&T in this case.
Yeah, plan to have a lot of time to do this, or to set it up in advance instead of expecting it to be set up, within a week.
So, shall we continue to the...
There was a question.
Presentation?
There was a question here.
What was the question?
When you were doing this, you said to replicate, so is your on-prem still a source, or is it offline, your on-prem already?
It's online. In this example, and I was going to do pretty much the same for Azure. It's online, and it could be running heavy load as well.
So it's replicating the data to the cloud also.
Correct.
At what point do you change the connection string on the application side?
So if you have an ongoing replication going, at some point in time, as the question here was, at what time do we change the connection string for the application? At some point in time, you need to stop the workload running on your source. And then you have to wait for all the data to be replicated. And these services have full control if there are any outstanding data to be replicated. And when that number is 0, there are no more changes going to be replicated. You will stop the migration service. Then you will change the connection string. And fingers crossed, it will connect to your target database engine in your preferred cloud.
What is it using to do the replication? Like, what type of model? Just because, like, for instance, for us, we have an issue because we run a lot of our simple recovery model, surely because our log cannot handle the amount of transactions, and nor are we a bank, so we don't actually care if we lose a couple here and there. But because of that, log shipping and the traditional SQL Server replication doesn't, like always on, and log shipping, that doesn't work for us. But is it using some sort of other type of replication behind the scenes, like block replication?
So the question is, what kind of, how does these services replicate the data from your source to your target? It's using the replication functionality built in the source database engine. So for SQL Server, that is transactional replication.
Okay.
For other database engines, it will use similar type of functionality or change data capture type of functionality.
So then that would be a requirement to turn on the database if you don't already have it?
So the question is, do you need to do something in advance to prepare for it to actually work? Yes, the replication code need to be installed on your source database engine in order for this to work.
Question back?
Does that mean not everything will be moved over since replication doesn't support objects without primary keys and things like that?
So the question is, does not everything get moved over because it doesn't support primary keys and so on?
Replication relies on primary keys.
Yeah.
You're talking about if you don't have any.
If you don't have any, yeah?
Yeah.
That's only for true replication itself.
Yeah.
But CDC doesn't care whether you have a primary key.
So the question is, if some of your tables don't have primary keys, will replication then fail? And that is one of the prerequisites that is stated in the documentation for the service, that if you have that kind of data objects, you need to fix that on a temporary basis in order for the application to work.
So,
I think we need to move on.
yeah, we do.
Let's talk a little bit about Google Cloud.
Yeah.
So what are their strengths? So they have a very stable backbone connection.
And this is actually quite interesting because what is a stable backbone? What is a strong backbone connection? All the providers will say their backbone is good enough, but they are coming at it from different angles. AWS, being a provider that has built up from supporting their online websites, has mostly configured it so that when you are connecting to their services, you will be pulled into their backbone as close as possible to the data center. Whereas Google and Azure, who are built up from the ground up to be a data center supporting the cloud customers, try to pull you into their backbone system as close to you as possible. This means that AWS might have issues with latency and with there's more fragile to disturbances in the internet, whereas Google and Azure have a lot more stable connection that way. However, there are some discrepancies because Google does not have a global reach on their backbone. For instance, there is no direct connection between the UK or Europe and India. So if you have a global network and you have users in the UK and you have data in India, it will go through North America instead. So there are things to consider there. And this is part of why looking at how the different providers are working can be of interest. There's actually a report that has the 2018 report came out last year, of course, but there's a 2019 report coming out this year, next week, trying to pin the different providers and how the internet connection is. However, that same report says that multi-cloud, so between cloud providers, they have a really strong connection in between each other, which supports, again, because of they have sharing the same centers in places, that supports a multi-cloud approach.
Google is also a leading innovator. They have very fast provisioning. So if you want to provision or create a virtual machine, that's done in almost, I will say, seconds. Whereas in Azure and AWS, it takes a few minutes, to provision a VM.
Yep.
They are the smallest cloud computing provider among the three. So they're kind of the underdog here.
Yeah.
They have a similar type of tool set as Azure and AWS, but not as rich. From the database migration side of things, they don't have this database migration service. They don't have this assessment kind of tools. I'm mentioning a tool called Migvisor here on the bottom here, which is a third-party tool, which can perform a full assessment and also a lot of, give you recommendations, both for homogeneous and heterogeneous data migrations. And also Google recommends this service. Since it is a third-party service, that also means you don't get it for free. They charge migration per database or per schema. Another thing with Migvisor is that it doesn't only help you migrate from wherever you're migrating to Google, it will perform the same type of service for migrating to AWS and Azure. So what service should you choose? Yeah, that's a good question, and there are a lot of parameters you have to consider. First of all, what is your source database engine? Do you want to do a homogeneous migration or a heterogeneous migration? And what you have listed here is the managed services from your source database system to any of those clouds. I won't go into detail here because we're a little bit short of time. And it's the same for NoSQL databases, which are listed here.
And again, these slides will be made available to you. So don't worry. So choosing your BI vendor is a bit of a different approach. BI in the cloud is typically something that ends up being not a migration, but a new project. And one of the problem is a lot of people are talking about ELT being the new ETL. Well, that's my opinion on that. But the thing is, because of the new technologies in cloud, the big data technologies that are there, they offer new methods of transporting data and transforming your data into a traditional data warehouse, or if you want to do it in a more big data, broad tables kind of approach. And of course, the cloud providers have a lot of different services to help you doing these things. So should you migrate, refactor, or rewrite? And that depends on which cloud solution provider you choose. If you migrate, which will be lifting your existing solution into VMs, you can choose any of them. If you refactor, so rewrite your code so it adapts, maybe change your SSIS packages, just the connection strings, or are you using Informatica, Talend, these kind of tools, then it's at least doable in some of these as long as you have the target engine, target database the same. Or should you consider alternatives to these or look at the closest match? So yeah, SQL Server and SSIS in Azure is nice. It's not as easy doing these things in AWS and Google. You can, of course, rewrite the whole thing. And then it comes down to picking the provider that matches best your needs, whether that be the speed, the costs, flexibility, and maybe you also have bought tools that are heavily leaning towards one of the clouds. For instance, Matillion is a tool that supports either Redshift or Snowflake or BigQuery, but it does not support SQL Data Warehouse. So AWS has a rich offering of AWS customized open source services, and there's lots of them. But for things like ETL, you have Glue. Then you have Redshift, which is their massive parallel processing engine for data warehouse loads. And you have a marketplace that is mature with lots of third-party offerings. For Azure, you have a mature marketplace. You have strong proprietary solutions, both SQL Server, Synapse Analytics, formerly known as SQL Data Warehouse, and a lot of different open source solutions. Okay, what? Came out of focus. And of course, you have the ability to refactor your SSIS, SSAS, and SSRS packages as well, using for, which means that you can use SSIS, deploy that into Data Factory with SSIS runtime. You can use SSAS as long as you use tabular models. Hopefully sometime soon they will also decide to use multidimensional, but they said that 2017 as well, and they still haven't done anything with it. So, and SSRS, you can port that directly into Power BI if you're having a Power BI premium tenant. And of course, a strength for Microsoft is Power BI in itself. Google Cloud has a full set of offerings on customized open source, but it is not as rich as the other two. But it has BigQuery, which is a very strong analytical engine, and a lot of analytics love BigQuery. It has a slightly strange pricing mechanism that I'm scared of. I don't like it because it's priced slightly on storage and per query megabyte. So if you have lots of joins, if you look on SQL Server and you look at Query Optimizer or Query Plan, you will see that when you have lots of joins, you'll have lots of data flowing through until you get the final result. And that's where they price.
Yeah, we had BigQuery, and our data scientists once proudly had a $100,000 bill.
Yeah, the $100,000 bill with BigQuery, yeah. You don't really have control on the pricing here. So it's
Free to put it in them.
yeah, but it's a strong mechanism, and if you're testing out BigQuery, do not use lots of tables. Use huge tables instead, because they will punish you on the joins. And Google is strong on ML and AI space. They own a lot of the patents that we are using these days, or TensorFlow, for instance, is from Google. You also have cloud agnostic offerings. So Databricks to use for ETL, for analytics, for machine learning, and so on, works across all the different cloud providers. Snowflake, being a massive parallel processing data warehouse, works on AWS, on Azure, and coming soon to Google. So they might be very good options as well. And of course, using third-party tools for your ETL. So the different ones, even things like Workscape and Time Extender and Expert BI, which are smaller automating ETL tools, work in a cloud environment and over multiple clouds. We're starting to run out of time, but let's see. In a cloud ETL or BI environment, you separate the different components into ingestion, and then you have batch ingestion like ssis, and you have streams like Kafka, so IoT streams or event-driven architecture. And of course, all the third-party tools I mentioned can be used in these cases. Same thing for storage. Where do you want to dump your data when you load it into your cloud? You have the transformation part, where you want to process your data, transform it. And then you have the different analytics or compute engines that also serve the data, where it persists the data and serve that to you. And what if I can't just choose one? Well, you can, of course, cherry pick your services, which is a good option. Either you want to use BigQuery, or you want to really love Redshift, but you want to use Power BI. Yeah, OK, you're multi-cloud. Use cloud agnostic services. Again, Databricks, Snowflake, that run across all providers. And you really should consider third-party orchestration when you're dealing with multi-cloud environments. But also remember cost drivers, for instance, egress, because it's free to put data into the cloud, or your cloud provider, but moving it out of the cloud provider again, that's where they cost. Yep. And a shameless plug, we have a multi-cloud session on Friday if you want to come and learn more about that. Next step up will be going to the different vendors' presentations. They are put in a schedule in a way that you can go to all of them, and I recommend you do, because even though you're a Microsoft SQL house this time, their services might actually surprise you. It's been the result of the projects that we have been working on that it wasn't written, what we thought was written in stone turned out to be not that solid. So, next up, we have Kahoot. That's your tests. And Kahoot is, if you go to kahoot.it, on your mobile phone, you will get a pin. Enter that pin, your nickname, and then you will get questions. There are 7 questions. You only have 10 seconds for each of these. And you will get scores on the right answer, but also how quickly you answer correctly. Yeah? And there will be prizes in the end.
You love the music, right?
So is anyone still entering? Yeah. All right, I think we'll start.
Are we ready?
You kicked you out? Oh, yeah, okay, well, okay.
Oh shit.
Getting the stress here. Sorry, we'll restart it for you.
What's it called again?
Yeah, we'll regenerate code for you.
Exit
done. Exit done.
Done?
Yeah. Play.
Done?
Yeah.
Skal vi get rett, kanskje?
Og så nå trykker du. Og så tar du Right.
Let's try again.
Yeah.
Kommer det ikke?
Refresh the page if you had trouble getting in. Well, more players than last, so it seems to be working. Good. Yeah, I think we'll need to start. I saw somebody was. Yeah, okay. Only if I got that correctly. So Prime is leading so far. Okay. How many tools does Azure have to help migration? Well, agreed. If we hadn't been able to stagger them, both are correctly, but it's 8. Yeah. How many cloud providers does Rune have accounts on? Yeah. Vangen. And Aurora is which MPP service differs most from the rest? So, catching up. Which clouds can you run Databricks? Hey, you listened.
Final question.
Which cloud provider is the best?
You did pay attention.
Yay! I was expecting a higher blue answer there, but that's good. So, we have 3 winners, Vangen, Jevits, and Prime. Raise your hands. Hey! You handle the prizes?
Yes. If you can get up to the podium after our session, and we will hand out SQL Saturday Oslo shirt, some luggage tag things, and I think that is it.
Hvordan kommer det videre?
Yeah.
Okay, so if anybody needs to connect with us, we're on Twitter. I have some business cards up here. And feel free to reach out to us for any questions you might have.